The blue light filled the playground like water. Jiwan looked up from his drawing in the sand and watched the strange glow dance between the trees. His sister Minji was pushing Do-yoon on the swing, while Hana built a tower with sticks nearby. None of them had ever seen light like this before. "Minji, look at that," Jiwan called to his sister. She was 2 years older and always knew what to do when strange things happened. Minji stopped pushing the swing and looked where her brother pointed. The blue light was getting brighter and seemed to come from above the trees. She felt something, cold in her stomach, like when she knew something bad was coming. "Everyone come here," she said in her serious voice. Right now, Do-yoon jumped off the swing and ran to her. He was only 6, but he always listened to Minji. Hana picked up her favorite stick and walked over too. The 4 children stood close. Together, as the blue light grew stronger, then everything changed. The air around them started to feel thick and heavy. The playground began to fade away like it was melting. Jiwan tried to grab Minji's hand, but his arm felt slow and strange. The last thing any of them remembered was the ground disappearing under their feet. When Jiwan woke up, everything was wrong. The ceiling above him was too high and made of something that looked like silver metal. The walls curved in ways that hurt to look at. The air smelled different, like metal and something sweet that made his nose itch. He sat up quickly and looked. Around, they were in a room with no windows. The floor was smooth and warm under his hands. Strange lights moved across the walls in patterns that never stopped. Minji was sitting against one wall with her arms around Do-yoon, who was still sleeping. Hana sat in a corner, watching everything with wide eyes. "Where are we?" Jiwan whispered. "I don't know," Minji said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "But we need to stay calm and think." Before anyone could say more, part of the wall opened like a door, but there was no door handle or frame. 3 tall creatures walked into the room. They looked like lizards that stood on 2 legs, with skin that changed colors from green to blue to purple. Their eyes were big and black, and they had too many fingers on their hands. The biggest lizard creature spoke, but the sounds it made were like clicks and hisses. Then something around its neck began to glow, and suddenly the children could understand. The words, "The specimens are awake," the creature said. "They appear to be in good health. Begin basic measurements." "Specimens?" Minji stood up, keeping Do-hyun behind her. "We're not specimens. We're children. Where are our parents?" The lizard creature looked at her with its big black eyes. It seemed confused by her words. "You are the native life forms from the 3rd planet of the Sol system. You have been selected for study." "Study?" Hana spoke for the first time. "Like in school?" "Not like school," the creature said. "You will help us understand your species. This is a great honor." Jiwan felt angry heat rise in his chest. These things had taken them from the playground. They had taken them from their families. "We want to go home," he said, standing next to Minji. "Home is no longer relevant," the creature said. "You are now property of the Vorthan Research Division. I am Commander Velix. You will be fed and housed according to standard protocols." Commander Velix turned to the other creatures and spoke in the clicking language again. One of them held up a small device that beeped and flashed lights at the children. The 3rd creature was smaller than the others and kept looking at the children in a way that seemed different from the other 2. "The readings are strange," the smaller creature said. "Their stress levels are very high, but they show complex social bonding behaviors. See how the larger specimens protect the smaller ones? All primitive species show basic pack instincts," Commander Velix said. "Nothing unusual. Continue the scans." But the smaller creature, whose name was Thric, felt troubled as he watched the human children. In all his years of studying different species, he had never seen young creatures comfort each other the way these small beings did. When the youngest one, Doyen, started to cry quietly, the others immediately moved to surround him with gentle touches and soft words. The Vorthons had no concept of childhood. Their species hatched fully formed and capable. Young Vorthons were simply smaller versions of adults, needing no care or protection. But these human children were different. They seemed incomplete somehow, vulnerable in ways that made Thrics feel uncomfortable. Are you certain these are mature specimens? Thrics asked carefully. Of course, Commander Velix snapped. They are mobile, they communicate, they problem solve. Size is irrelevant. Many species are simply smaller than others. Far away on Earth, Kyung sat at his kitchen table, staring at 4 empty plates. His children, Ji-won and Minji, had not come. Home from the park, he had called everyone he could think of. The police were searching, but they had found nothing except some strange marks in the sand where the children had been playing. The marks looked like they had been burned into the ground in perfect circles. The police said they had never seen anything like them. One officer mentioned that similar marks had been found in 3 other cities around the world, always where children had gone missing. Across the city, Su Yang paced her living room while her husband tried to calm her down. Their children, Ga-yoon and Hana, had vanished from the same park at the same time. The only clue was a neighbor who said she had seen a strange blue light in the sky just before sunset. Su Young worked at the university, studying languages and how people communicate. She was very smart and knew things about space and science that most people did not. When she heard about the blue light and the burned circles, her mind started working on possibilities that frightened her. What if it wasn't people who took them? She said to her husband, "What do you mean? What if it was something else? Something not from Earth?" Her husband wanted to tell her that was impossible, but the evidence was too strange to ignore. Children disappearing with no trace, mysterious lights, patterns burned into the ground that looked like no human technology could make them. Back on the alien ship, the children had been moved to what the creatures called their habitat. It was supposed to be comfortable for humans, but it was all wrong. The bed was too hard, the lights were too bright, and the food they brought was like nothing any of them had ever seen. Minji had taken charge, the way she always did when grown-ups were not around. She made sure everyone ate something, even though the food tasted strange. She helped Do-yoon wash his face with water that came from a wall when you touched it. She told Hana they would find a way home soon, but inside, Minji was scared. She was 10 years old, and these tall lizard creatures expected her to be something she was not. They treated the children like they were animals in a zoo, but worse than that. At least animals in zoos had people who cared about them. Ji-won spent his time looking at everything in their prison room. He was good at noticing how things worked, and he could see that the walls were not really solid. They were made of some kind of energy that could change shape. The lights responded to movement and sound. Even the floor seemed to know where they were standing. "I think this whole room is like one big computer," he told Minji quietly when the creatures were gone. "Can you figure out how it works?" she asked. "Maybe, but it might take time." "We might not have time," Hana said from her corner. "Those things are planning to do tests on us." I heard them talking. The children looked at each other with fear and determination. They were far from home, trapped by creatures they did not understand, but they were not going to give up. They had each other, and somehow that made them feel stronger. They did not know that their parents were already working together, sharing information and theories. They did not know that the strange energy signatures left behind by their abduction were being studied by the smartest people on Earth, and they definitely did not know that their disappearance was about to start something that would shake the entire galaxy. All they knew was that they wanted to go home, and they would do whatever it took to get there. Thric could not sleep. The small Vorthan researcher kept thinking about the human specimens and their strange behavior. He had watched them through the monitoring systems all night, and what he saw worried him more with each passing hour. Humans never stopped caring for each other. When the smallest one, Do-yoon, had nightmares, the others took turns staying awake to comfort him. When Hana refused to eat the provided nutrition blocks, Minji found ways to make the food seem more appealing by breaking it into fun shapes. Ji-won shared his portion with anyone who was still hungry. These were not the actions of simple pack animals. These were complex social behaviors that suggested something Thric had never seen before in any species. He pulled up files from his personal research database and began searching for similar patterns. What he found made his skin change to the pale yellow color of deep worry. There were dozens of cases in galactic history where research teams had taken specimens from primitive worlds only to have those worlds respond with terrifying violence. The planet Kethera had gone completely silent after researchers took what they thought were adult specimens. When investigation teams arrived months later, they found empty cities and weapons of mass destruction that should have been impossible for a pre-space civilization to create. The Ketherans had destroyed themselves rather than live without their taken people. The Rillan system had been home to a peaceful species until the day researchers captured some of their population. Within weeks, the Rillans had somehow built primitive spacecraft and began attacking any alien vessel that entered their space. They had never stopped fighting, and their system was still considered a no-go zone 300 years later. But there was one file that made Thrix's hearts race with fear. The Zenthari incident. Researchers had taken specimens from Zenther Prime, thinking they were capturing fully mature adults. It was not until later that they discovered the Zenthari had different life stages, and they had accidentally taken children. The response had been swift and total. The Zenthari had advanced from stone tools to interstellar warfare in less than 6 months. They had hunted down every member of the research team and destroyed 3 major space stations before the Galactic Council could negotiate peace. Terms were simple: return all Zenthari children immediately and never enter their space again. Thric looked at the monitor showing the human children. Minji was braiding Hana's hair, while Ji-won drew patterns in the condensation on the walls. Do-yoon was trying to talk to one of the cleaning robots that had entered their cell. By the ancient stars, Thric whispered to himself, they are children. He had to warn Commander Velix immediately. On Earth, Kyung sat in a military briefing room, surrounded by people in uniforms and lab coats. As a former Special Forces soldier, he had contacts in places most civilians never knew existed. When his children disappeared along with 3 others in impossible circumstances, those contacts had rallied to help him. The energy readings are definitely not human technology, Colonel Park was saying as she pointed to charts on the wall. We've detected similar signatures at 4 different locations worldwide, all at the exact time children went missing. How is that possible? Kyung asked, though he was starting to suspect an answer he did not want to believe. Sir, with respect, I think we need to consider possibilities beyond Earth, said Dr. Kim, a physicist who specialized in theoretical technologies. These energy patterns suggest some kind of space-folding technology, something that could create a portal or transport beam. Kyung felt cold. The idea that his children might be somewhere in space, somewhere impossibly far away, made him want to break something. But he forced himself to think clearly. If aliens had taken his children, then aliens could bring them back. What do we need to do? He asked. We need to contact the other families, Colonel Park said, and we need to study these energy signatures more closely. If we can figure out how this technology works, maybe we can figure out how to communicate with whoever used it. Across the city, Su-young was having similar thoughts. Her background in linguistics and xenobiology made her the perfect person to analyze the patterns they had found. She sat at her computer, staring at radio telescope data that showed strange signals coming from deep space. The signals had started just hours after the children disappeared. They were mathematical sequences, repeating in patterns that seemed almost like a greeting or an identification code. Someone out there was trying to communicate, and Su Yang was determined to understand what they were saying. Her phone rang. The caller identified himself as Colonel Park, and he was looking for help from anyone with expertise in communication and space science. Within an hour, Su Yang was sitting across from Kyung in the same briefing room, comparing notes and fears. Your children were taken too? Kyung asked when introductions were made. Do-yeon and Hana, Su Yang said. From the same park, at the same time as yours. They looked at each other and understood immediately that they were going to work together. Their children were out there somewhere, and they would do whatever it took to bring them home. On the alien research ship, Thric was trying to get Commander Velix to listen to his concerns. But the commander was too excited about the upcoming experiments to pay attention to warnings about human behavior patterns. Look at these initial scans, Velix said, his skin showing the bright orange of enthusiasm. Their brain activity is unlike anything we have seen. They show complex emotional responses, advanced problem-solving abilities, and incredible adaptability. They could provide years of valuable research. Commander, please listen to me, Thric said urgently. I believe we may have made a serious error. These specimens show signs of being juvenile members of their species, not adults. Impossible. Velix snapped. They communicate clearly. They show reasoning abilities. They can care for themselves. All signs of mature specimens. But they also show dependency behaviors, emotional bonding, and stress responses that suggest they are incomplete developmental stages. What if they are children? Velix's skin shifted to the red of anger. Do not question my expertise, Junior. Researcher. I have been studying primitive species for longer than you have been alive. These are simply small adults from a small species. But even as he said it, Velix felt a small doubt. He had noticed that the humans seemed unusually attached to each other for individual specimens, and their stress levels remained dangerously high despite being provided with adequate food and shelter. In their cell, the human children were adapting in ways that surprised even themselves. Ji-won had figured out how to make the wall lights respond to his movements, creating patterns that helped them keep track of time. Minji had established a routine that kept everyone fed, clean, and as comfortable as possible. Hana had memorized every sound the ship made and could predict when the aliens would visit. Do-yoon had somehow made friends with the cleaning robots, which now lingered in their cell longer than necessary. We need to find a way to contact our parents, Minji said during one of their quiet planning sessions. They must be looking for us. The tall lizard things have computers everywhere, Ji-won said. If I can figure out how they work, maybe I can send a message. Do you think Mom and Dad will find us? Do-yoon asked quietly. Yes, Minji said without hesitation. They will never stop looking. We just have to stay alive and stay together until they do. What the children did not know was that their parents were already making progress. Su Yang had decoded part of the alien communication patterns and discovered they were mathematical greetings in a language designed for first contact. Kyung had convinced his military contacts to start preparing Earth's defenses for the possibility that the aliens might not be friendly. More importantly, they were not the only ones working on the problem. Around the world, other parents whose children had been taken were sharing information and resources. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, and researchers from every country were quietly beginning to cooperate in ways that had never happened before. In human history, the first breakthrough came when Dr. Kim successfully created a small energy field using the same principles they had detected in the alien signatures. It was tiny and lasted only a few seconds, but it proved that humans could potentially recreate the technology used to take their children. If we can make a bigger version of this, Dr. Kim told the group, we might be able to communicate across space or even travel across space. How long would that take? Kyung asked, with normal research and development? Maybe 20 years. But if every scientist on Earth works together, and we ignore safety protocols and budget constraints. Dr. Kim paused, doing calculations in his head. Maybe 6 months. We do not have 6 months, Su-Yang said firmly. We need to try for 6 weeks. That is impossible, Dr. Kim said. My children are counting on us, Su-Yang replied. Impossible is not an option. As Earth began to mobilize in ways that would have seemed insane just days before, Thric finally found someone who would listen to his warnings. Arbiter Zenth was an ancient member of the Galactic Council who had lived long enough to see the mistakes of the past. You believe the humans are juveniles? Zenth asked, his old voice carrying this weight of centuries. Yes, honored Arbiter. Everything about their behavior suggests they are incomplete developmental stages. A message went out from Earth on every frequency humans could produce. Radio waves, microwave bursts, laser communications, and even the experimental energy fields that Dr. Kim had created. The message was simple and repeated in mathematical sequences that any intelligent species should be able to understand. Return our children, or we will come for them. Across the galaxy, communication officers on thousands of ships and stations stopped their work to listen to the strange transmission. Most dismissed it as noise from a primitive world, but some felt a chill they could not explain. The message carried something beyond words, a feeling of absolute determination that made even hardened military commanders uncomfortable. On the research station, where the human children were being held, Commander Velix received urgent communications from the Galactic Council ordering him to return his specimens immediately. He read the messages with growing anger and disbelief. Impossible, he said to his assistant. The Council has lost their minds. These specimens will provide breakthrough research. I am not returning them based on the paranoid theories of a junior researcher. He deleted the messages and ordered his ship to maintain communication silence. As far as the galaxy was concerned, the research vessel had simply gone dark during routine deep space operations. It happened sometimes, and no one would question it for months. But Velix had made a critical error. He did not understand that when humans face an existential threat, they do not just adapt, they transform their entire civilization in a matter of weeks. On Earth, something unprecedented was happening. Every nation had quietly agreed to share their most classified military and scientific research. Weapons engineers were working with space scientists. Computer programmers were collaborating with nuclear physicists. Factory workers were retooling assembly lines to produce components for technologies that had been theoretical just days before. Kyung stood in what used to be a car manufacturing plant, watching robots assemble something that looked like a missile, but hummed with energy that made his teeth ache. Engineers from 12 different countries worked side by side, sharing knowledge that their governments had protected for decades. How is this possible? He asked Dr. Kim, who was overseeing the construction of humanity's first faster-than-light engine. Fear, Dr. Kim said simply, and love. When parents fear for their children, they become capable of anything. When engineers and scientists work without restrictions, without bureaucracy, without anyone telling them something is impossible, they can achieve miracles. The first human ship was ugly. It looked like someone had strapped rocket engines to a space station and covered the whole thing with weapons that had been invented the week before. But it worked. When the ship's engines fired for the first time, they tore a hole in space itself and stepped through it like walking through a door. Kyung was on that ship. He had demanded to be part of the rescue mission, and no one had the heart to refuse a father looking for his children. The ship also carried Su Yang, 3 other parents whose children had been taken, and a crew of volunteers who understood. They might not come back. First jump successful, the pilot announced as stars appeared in new positions outside the windows. We have traveled 12 light years in approximately 15 minutes. Where to next? Kyung asked, studying the star. Charts that Su Yang had created by analyzing the alien communication signals. The signals came from this direction, Su Yang said, pointing to a cluster of stars that looked no different from any others. But space is very big. We need to search methodically. What they did not know was that they were not alone. 3. More ships had been completed while they were traveling, each one more advanced than the last as human engineers learned from their mistakes and shared improvements in real time. A 5th ship was nearly ready, and construction had begun on 10 more. Humanity was not just building a rescue mission. They were building a fleet. Meanwhile, on the research station, the human children had become a crisis that Commander Velix refused to acknowledge. Ji-won had somehow figured out how to access the station's basic computer systems while watching the patterns of lights in their cell walls. He could not control anything important yet, but he could read information about the station's layout and operations. There are other prisoners here, he told his sister quietly during one of their planning meetings. Lots of them, from different worlds. Are any of them children like us? Minji asked. I think so. The computer files talk about juvenile specimens from 6 different species. We are not the only ones they have taken. This information changed everything for Minji. It was bad enough that they had been stolen from their families, but knowing that other children were suffering the same thing made her angry in a way she had never felt before. We are going to escape, she told the others, and we are going to help the other children escape too. How? Hannah asked. The lizard things are too big and strong. Ji-won can access their computers. Do-yoon has made friends with their robots. You have memorized every part of this place. And I can organize people and make plans. Together, we can do this. The children did not know it, but they were developing skills that would have impressed adult Special Forces soldiers. They were learning to work as a team under extreme stress, to gather intelligence, to plan operations, and to never give up hope. These were not normal children anymore. They were becoming something harder and more dangerous. Thric had finally managed to get a message through to Arbiter Zenth, warning him that Commander Velix had gone rogue and refused to return the human specimens. The response came back immediately, and it was more terrifying than Thric had expected. Monitor all communication frequencies, Zenth's message said. The humans have begun broadcasting threats across the galaxy. They claim they will come for their children themselves. Our xenobiologists believe this is impossible, but I am old enough to remember when other impossible things happened. Prepare for the worst. But it was too late for preparations. Human ships were already moving through space, following energy, trails and communication signals with a determination that amazed and frightened the aliens who detected them. The ships were crude and should not have been able to function, but they worked anyway through sheer human stubbornness. The first contact between humans and aliens happened near a trading station called Nexus Point. A human ship emerged from faster-than-light travel and immediately began scanning every vessel in the area. The station's security forces moved to intercept what they assumed was an unknown hostile. Unknown vessel, identify yourself or we will open fire, the station commander broadcast. The human response was simple and chilling. We are looking for our children. Stand aside or be destroyed. The security ships were some of the most advanced in the galaxy, equipped with weapons that could destroy planets. But when they fired on the crude human vessel, their energy beams simply disappeared into absorbing fields that should not have existed on such a primitive ship. The human return fire was devastating. Weapons that seemed to be built from spare parts and raw determination cut through alien shielding like it was made of paper. Within minutes, the security fleet was floating debris, and the human ship was boarding the station to search for human children. They did not find any children at Nexus Point, but they did find computer records that showed where research vessels operated. They also left behind a message that spread across the galactic communication network like wildfire. We know you have our children. Return them now, and no one else needs to die. Continue to hide them from us, and we will tear apart every ship and station in the galaxy until we find them. You have been warned. Commander Velix received reports of the human attacks with disbelief and growing fear. How had a primitive species developed faster-than-light travel and weapons that could defeat galactic security forces? It was impossible. Sir, his communications officer said nervously, we are receiving priority messages from the Galactic Council, the Vorthan High Command, and 17 different species governments. They are all ordering us to return the human specimens immediately. Ignore them, Velix snapped, but his skin was showing the pale green of fear. Continue with the research. We are too close to breakthrough discoveries to stop now. But the research was not going well. The human children had become increasingly uncooperative. They had somehow taught other young prisoners how to resist testing procedures. They had figured out how to interfere with monitoring equipment. Worst of all, they seemed to be learning how the station systems worked faster than adult researchers could keep up with. The specimens are becoming problematic, his head researcher reported. They appear to be sabotaging equipment and organizing resistance among the other juvenile specimens. Perhaps we should consider sedation protocols. Do it, Velix said. Whatever it takes to complete the research. This was his final mistake. When the sedation team entered the children's cell, they found it empty. G1 had finally figured out how to override the containment fields. The children had escaped into the station's ventilation system, and they were not alone. They had freed 6 other young prisoners from different species, and together they were making their way toward the station's communication center. Min-G had a plan. If they could access the main communication system. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species shouted over each other in dozens of languages, while translation systems struggled to keep up. At the center of it all sat Arbiter Zenth, older than most civilizations and tired in ways that went beyond physical exhaustion. Order, Zenth called, his voice carrying an authority that came from surviving the rise and fall of empires. We will address this crisis systematically. Crisis? Ambassador Kellex of the Vorthan Empire stood, his skin cycling through angry reds and defensive purples. A few primitive ships attacking our trade routes is hardly a galactic crisis. Primitive ships? Council Admiral Wraith activated a holographic display showing the remains of Nexus Point Station. These primitive ships destroyed one of our most heavily defended positions in under an hour. They used weapons we do not understand and shielding technology that should not exist. Impossible, Ambassador Kellex protested. The human homeworld has barely achieved orbital flight. They cannot have developed faster than light travel in mere weeks. And yet they have, Zenth said grimly. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected at least 12 human vessels moving through sectors they should not be able to reach. They are searching methodically, and they are armed with weapons that make our best defenses useless. Representative Fava of the Centauran Alliance raised a crystalline appendage. What do they want? Have they made any demands? The same demand, repeated on every frequency they can access, Admiral Wraith said. Return our children, or we will tear apart the galaxy to find them. Children? Ambassador Kellex's skin shifted to confused yellow. They keep calling their specimens children. It makes no sense. It makes perfect sense, Senth said quietly. Because they are children. The humans we took were juveniles, offspring, young members of their species who are not yet mature. We have committed the worst possible crime in their eyes. The council chamber fell silent. Every species represented. They had their own young, their own ways of protecting and nurturing their offspring. The idea of aliens stealing their children was the stuff of nightmares. How do we stop them? Someone asked from the back of the chamber. We return their children immediately, Senth said, before they decide that negotiation is impossible. The research vessel has gone dark, Admiral Wraith reported. Commander Velix is not responding to any communications. We believe he is continuing his experiments despite direct orders to stop. Then we are all in terrible danger, Senth said. In the research station's communication center, Jiwan's fingers moved across alien control panels with growing confidence. The computer systems were more advanced than anything on Earth, but they followed logical patterns that he could understand once he figured out the basic principles. Almost got it, he whispered to Minji, who was watching the door for guards, while the other children kept lookout at different positions. Behind them, the 6 alien children they had rescued watched with amazement. They came from different worlds and had different shapes. Some looked like cats with 6 legs. Others were covered in scales or feathers of fur. But they all understood what the human children were trying to do. They were trying to call for help. There, Jiwan said, as lights began flashing across the communication board. I am sending a signal that uses the same mathematical patterns our parents taught us for emergencies. If they are looking for us, they will recognize it. The signal went out into space, a complex mathematical sequence that meant, help us. We are here in ways that any human scientist would understand. But more than that, the signal carried embedded information about the station's location, its defenses, and how many children were being held prisoner. 16 light years away, Kyung was studying star charts when his ship's communication officer suddenly straightened in her chair. Sir, we are receiving a priority signal on the emergency frequency. Mathematical sequence, definitely human origin. Put it through, Kyung said, his heart racing. The signal was complex, but Suyao understood it immediately. It is from the children, she said, tears streaming down her face. They are alive, and they are telling us how to find them. How long to get there? Kyung asked the pilot. 8 hours at maximum speed. Do it, and send a message to the fleet. We have found them. The response from Earth was immediate. Every human ship in space changed course toward the coordinates the children had provided. But more than that, Earth itself began preparing for war on a scale that would have been impossible just weeks before. Weapons that existed only in theoretical papers were being built in factories that worked around the clock. Ships that should have taken years to design were rolling off assembly lines every few days. Scientists who had spent careers working on separate projects were now sharing everything they knew to create technologies that could threaten entire star systems. Humanity was not just coming to rescue their children. They were preparing to fight the entire galaxy if necessary. On the research station, Commander Velix was learning that his perfect specimens had become his worst nightmare. The human children had not just escaped, they had organized a full prisoner revolt. Every young alien being held on the station was now free and working together to take control of critical systems. How is this possible? Velix demanded as his security chief reported another system failure. The human juveniles appeared to have superior problem-solving abilities and leadership skills, the security chief said nervously. They have taught the other young prisoners how to work together in ways we have never seen before. They are acting like a trained military unit. They are children, Velix shouted. Small, weak, primitive children. Yes, sir, but they have taken control of life support, navigation, and communications. They are demanding to speak with you directly. Velix's skin showed deep purple rage. but he knew he had no choice. His station was being taken over by children, and somehow that was more terrifying than any adult enemy he had ever faced. When the communication screen activated, he found himself looking at the human female juvenile, Minji. Behind her stood the other human children and 6 young aliens who looked at him with eyes full of anger and determination. "We want to go home," Minji said simply. "All of us, right now." "Impossible," Velix said. "You are valuable research specimens. Your escape ends now. Security teams are on their way to recapture you." "No, they are not," Ji-Wan said, moving into view. "I have locked down all the security doors and shut off power to the weapon systems. Your security teams are trapped in their own barracks. Furthermore," Minji continued, "we have sent a signal to our parents telling them where we are. They are coming for us, and when they get here, you will wish you had just let us go." Velix felt cold fear creep up his spine. The reports from across the galaxy described human ships that could destroy space stations with ease. If they were really coming here, his research facility would not be able to stop them. "You do not understand," he said, trying to sound reasonable. "We mean you no harm. We are simply trying to learn about your species. This is normal scientific research. Taking children from their families is not research," Hana said, speaking for the first time since they had arrived. "It is evil." "You are not children," Velix shouted. "You are fully functional adult specimens." The human children looked at each other, and something passed between them that Velix did not understand. It was a moment of shared knowledge, of plans made and accepted. "We will show you what human children can do," Minji said quietly, "when people threaten their families." The communication screen went dark. Within minutes, every system on the station began failing in sequence. Lights went out section by section. Gravity generators shut down. Emergency klaxons wailed until the children turned those off too. The station's orbit began to decay as navigation systems went offline. In their new command center, the children worked with calm efficiency. Each of them had a job, and they performed it with skills that would have amazed their parents. They were no longer just trying to survive. They were taking control of their situation completely. 8 hours until our parents arrive," Ji-Wan announced, monitoring the approaching human fleet on the station's sensors. "Perfect," Minji said. "That gives us time to free the adult prisoners too. Some of them have been here for years. And time to download all their research data," Hana added. "Our parents will want to know everything these aliens have been doing to people they stole." Dayun was playing with a group of young alien prisoners who had never had the chance to be children before. His laughter echoed through the corridor, and for the first time since their capture, all the children remembered what it felt like to be safe. But safety was temporary. The human fleet was coming, and they were bringing with them the fury of an entire species that had just learned their children could be threatened by strangers from the stars. The galaxy was about to discover why evolution had made humans into apex predators, and why threatening their young was the fastest way to face extinction. Commander Velix sat in his emergency bunker and tried to calculate how much time he had left before the humans arrived. Then he tried to figure out if surrendering immediately would be enough to save his life. Looking at his failing station, now completely controlled by children who moved with the precision of trained soldiers, the human fleet arrived like a storm of vengeance made solid. 12 ships, each one different from the others, as human engineers had learned and improved with every design. They were ugly, dangerous things that looked like they had been built from spare parts and pure determination. But they moved through space with deadly purpose, and their weapons hummed with energy that made reality itself seem nervous. Kyung stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the research station grow larger on the screen. His hands were steady, but inside his chest burned with 8 weeks of fear and fury. Somewhere on that station were his children, and he would tear it apart with his bare hands if necessary to get them back. Station Commander, respond immediately. Su Yang broadcast on all frequencies. Her voice was calm and professional, but anyone listening could hear the steel underneath. Return our children now, and we will consider not destroying you. Commander. Velix stared at the approaching fleet from his emergency bunker. His station's weapons were offline, controlled by the human children who had somehow taken over his entire facility. His security forces were trapped in their own barracks. Even his escape pods had been locked down by young aliens who worked together like they had been planning this for years instead of ours. Human vessels, he transmitted, his voice shaking with fear and anger. I am Commander Velix of the Vorthan Research Division. Your specimens are safe and well cared for. This attack is unnecessary and illegal under galactic law. The response came from a different voice, one that carried the quiet authority of someone who had spent years leading soldiers into dangerous places. Commander, this is Kyung. You took my children. You took my son and daughter from a playground where they were building sand castles and playing on swings. You stole them from their home, from their family, from everything they have ever known. And you call them specimens. Kyung paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was so cold it made the communication systems crackle. I am going to board your station. I am going to find my children. And if you have hurt them in any way, I will show you what human parents are capable of when someone threatens their young. On the station, the children heard their parents' voices through the communication system and felt something they had not experienced in weeks: absolute safety. They knew their parents were coming, and they knew everything was going to be all right. Dad's here, Jiwan said, grinning for the first time since their capture. Mom sounds really angry, Hana said. With satisfaction. Good. Minji activated the station's external communication system. Mom, Dad, we are okay. We took control of the station. We freed all the other children too, and we have been taking care of them. There was a moment of silence on the channel, and then Su Yao's voice came through, thick with tears and amazement. You took control of the station? By yourselves? We had help from the other children, Do-Yan said proudly, and from some nice aliens who did not like what the bad aliens were doing. Are you hurt? Kyung asked, his voice tight with concern. No. Dad, the lizard aliens were mean, but they did not really hurt us. Mostly they just wanted to run tests and study us. But we did not let them. Thric, who had been monitoring communications from his own ship nearby, felt his heart breaking with relief and shame. The human children were safe, but only because they had protected themselves and each other. His own species had failed them completely. Honored human parents, he transmitted on a private channel. I am Thric of the Vorthan Research Division. I tried to warn my commanders that your offspring were juveniles, but they would not listen. I am deeply sorry for what has happened. You tried to help, Su Yao asked. I tried, but I failed. I should have done more. You tried, Kyung said simply. That matters. The boarding operation was swift and efficient. Human soldiers moved through the station like they had trained for this exact scenario, but they found no resistance. The children had done such a complete job of taking control that there was nothing left for the adults to do except walk to the command center and collect their families. When Kyung saw his children again, he dropped to his knees and pulled them into a hug that lasted several minutes. They felt smaller than he remembered, but also somehow stronger. They had survived something that would have broken many adults, and they had not just survived, they had thrived. I am so proud of you, he whispered into their hair. You took care of yourselves, and you took care of others. You were braver than I could ever be. Su Yang was crying as she held Do-Yan and Hana, but she was also studying the station around. them with professional interest. How did you figure out their technology so quickly? She asked Jiwan. It is not that different from our computers, Jiwan said. Just more advanced. Once I understood the basic patterns, I could work with it. And you organized all the children? She asked Minji. Someone had to, Minji said simply. They were scared and alone, just like we were. The reunion was interrupted by Arbiter Zenth, who had arrived with the Council fleet to oversee the resolution of the crisis. The ancient being's first action was to formally apologize to every human present and to guarantee that such a thing would never happen again. The Galactic Council takes full responsibility for this incident, Zenth said solemnly. Commander Velix acted against direct orders, but that does not excuse our failure to prevent it. We will ensure that compensation is provided and that new laws are enacted to prevent similar tragedies. What kind of laws? Su Yang asked. She was no longer just a worried mother. She had become Earth's unofficial ambassador to the galaxy, and she wanted to make sure this conversation went in the right direction. The Terran Doctrine, Zenth said. A formal recognition that humans are under galactic protection due to their unique response to threats against their offspring. Any species that harms human children will face the full response of both human forces and the Galactic Council. What about the other children who were taken? Minji asked. The ones from different worlds. They will be returned to their families immediately, Zenth promised. And their worlds will receive the same protections as yours. Kyung was only half listening to the diplomatic conversation. He was watching his children interact with the young aliens they had rescued, seeing how naturally they had formed bonds with beings from completely different species. These children had been through something horrible, but they had come out of it with skills and perspectives that could change the galaxy. What happens now? He asked Su Yang quietly. Now we go home, she said. But I think home is going to be very different from the way we left it. She was right. Earth had changed during the weeks the children were missing. The planet had unified in ways that had never happened before, sharing technology and resources with a single goal. The ships that had rescued the children were just the beginning. Humanity had developed capabilities that put them among the most advanced species in the galaxy, and they had done it in less than 2 months. The children themselves had changed too. They were still children, still young, and needing their parents' love and protection. But they were also something new, humans who had faced the unknown and mastered it, who had led others through crisis, who had proven that human potential was virtually unlimited when properly motivated. Thric was given permission to return to Earth with the human fleet. He wanted to study human development and child-rearing practices, but more than that, he wanted to help make sure that what had happened to these children never happened to any others. He had found his calling as a protector of the young, and it was a calling he would follow for the rest of his long life. Commander Velix was arrested by the Council fleet and would spend the rest of his life in prison, but not before he was forced to publicly apologize to every family affected by his crimes. He had learned too late that some mistakes cannot be fixed, only punished. The trip home took 3 days, during which the children told their parents everything that had happened. They talked about being scared and homesick, but also about learning to work together and take care of others. They had grown up faster than children should have to, but they had grown up strong. When Earth appeared on the view screen, green and blue and beautiful, all 4 children pressed against the windows, cried. They were home, they were safe, they were together, and behind them, the galaxy was learning a new truth that would be whispered in starports and transmitted across the communication networks for generations to come. Humans might seem peaceful and friendly, but if you threaten their children, they will become a force of nature that can tear apart reality itself to protect their young. Never again would anyone make the mistake of taking human children. The Terran Doctrine would see to that dot, but more importantly, Humanity had taken its first real step into the galactic community, not as primitives seeking guidance, but as equals who had proven themselves capable of anything when their families were at stake. The children who had been taken as specimens had returned as ambassadors, carrying with them the seeds of a future where humans and aliens could work together to protect all children. Everywhere the galaxy was safer because 4 small humans had refused to give up hope, had learned to lead others, and had reminded everyone that the most dangerous thing in the universe is a parent looking for their lost child.